So good morning. Today is the fourth day of Tammuz, the 23rd of June, and we're going to be winding up Parashat Korach today and focusing on the aftermath of the opposition that Korach presented to Moses. And in the sixth and seventh reading we have a restructuring in a sense, but it's really restating many of the things we've already seen, but reminding us that the priests and the Levites are meant to work together, as opposed to the Korach rebellion, which was trying to switch the tables and turn the Levites into priests and the priests maybe into Levites. Something that, by the way, as we mentioned about Korach in general, will be in the future, that the Levites will rise up higher in their stature than the priests. There's this verse in Jeremiah that says, "Kohanim Leviim," the priests who are Levites, and from that we learn that the Levites themselves will rise to a higher level. And what does that mean? It means that the priests, it doesn't mean that they'll be higher than the priests. It means that they will ascend to the level of the priests. The priests will go up to a higher level. At the same time, the regular Israelite Jews will be at the level of the Levites. And so this is called the ascent of the worlds. So at each stage, there's a vacuum left, and so something has to fill that. So what fills the place of the Jews? So that becomes the righteous Gentiles, the ones who have maybe not converted, but who become the holy nation of God now, that they also have now a place. And the rest of the non-Jews, if that are not righteous, so they take the place of the righteous Gentiles now. So there's an ascent of the entire world that's promised in the future. But we want to focus on one of the things that came out of this aftermath, and that is, in a certain sense, it's the recognition that what Korach wanted was not entirely negative. And this will tie us into next week's Parashat Chukat, where we learn about the process of purifying someone from contact with death through the ashes of the red heifer. There's even a medrash that we don't have before us, but the Baal Shem Tov quotes, that why did Korach oppose Moses in the first place? Where did he even come up with this crazy idea? And it says that he saw the red heifer. What does it mean that he saw it? It means that he had a prophecy. And he realized that his prophecy was a prophecy that Moses had not received yet. So he was seeing something that Moses was not seeing yet. And that was the red heifer. And what did he learn from the red heifer? This we'll talk about next week much more in length. But he learned the principle that you always have to take initiative. That you can't stay where you are. If you're standing still, you're actually falling backwards when it comes to spiritual progress. If you're not making progress, you're actually falling backwards. And it's the same idea as what we have, for instance, the Rebbe talked about this many times. When you're in outer space, if you're not expending any energy, you're moving already. Because in outer space, there's nothing to prevent you. There's no friction. But here on Earth, if you're in a car and you don't continue to burn gas and you're not pushing the pedal, then the car slows down. It's actually slowing down. You're going backwards in a sense. If you go up a hill, then you'll see that you'll go backwards. The reason is that in this world, we're fighting constantly against the opposing forces of the evil inclination. So you always have to be pushing forward. You have to always be putting your foot down on the pedal to make sure that you're getting ahead. Otherwise, you're falling backwards. So that's a very important principle that Korach saw, and when he saw this, he realized, and we'll talk much more about this next week. he saw that he had the responsibility of trying to get ahead. And he wasn't necessarily only saying that Moses is wrong. He was more concerned in a certain sense about his own progress. And he was looking to achieve a higher level. But, as we know, he did it the wrong way. He did it through controversy. He did it through a way that he shouldn't have. But at the beginning of the 7th reading, which we'll read tomorrow, we're in Numbers 18, verse 23, a very, very famous verse in the entire Zohar and mystical tradition of Judaism. And it reads in Hebrew, "Ve'avad halevi hu et avodat oel moed, vehem yisu avonam chukat olam ledorotechem u'betoch bnei Yisrael lo yinchalu nachala." And the translation that you'll usually find is like this: the Levite shall alone perform the service of the tent of meeting. And they, meaning the Levites, will bear the guilt, the iniquity of the people who enter the tent if somebody comes in, an eternal rule for all their generations. They will have no inheritance among the Israelites. They don't get a piece of the land of Israel. That's the usual translation. The Levite alone will serve or be responsible for what happens in the tent of meeting. However, the wording in Hebrew is very troubling. This is not the way you would say this. This is how it's translated. But in Hebrew, it's almost like there's an unnecessary word stuck here in the middle, and it's ve'avad halevi hu. The Levite will serve, and then it's like I would say he. Like I say again, he. The Levite, I could say the Levite, he will serve, but that's not what it says. It says the Levite will serve, he. And then suddenly this he, we don't know what it's doing in the middle of the verse. So again, contextually, when people translate this, they write, the Levite will serve alone. He alone will serve, meaning nobody else has that responsibility. But because of the structure of this strange sentence, of this strange verse, the Zohar and all the mystical tradition focuses on it tremendously. And what it comes down to is that the Levite has aspirations to reach that which is called he. The Levite will serve he. He wants to serve the he. What is the he? He is the third person. There is I, you, and he. So when I say that someone's in the third person, I'm treating them as if they are concealed. They're not here. Because I'm talking about him, he. Someone who's not in front of me. What does this mean? It means that usually, I'll say it in the way that a modern day philosopher said it, usually people know what they don't know. Meaning, I know what I do know, and I've read, let's say, X amount of books, and I know there are certain topics that I don't know. But I don't usually talk about what I don't know that I don't know. What I don't know that I don't know is a completely different level of concealment from my mind. Now think about it this way, that we all have a certain respect and appreciation for the fact that God is unknowable. But when we say unknowable, we are usually talking about that He's beyond what we know. Or like Plato said, after he was with Socrates, that I've learned enough to know what I don't know. I've I've drawn the limits of my knowledge, and I know that anything that's beyond that is already unknowable to me. However, that's not God yet. That's how we usually think about God. That God is just unknowable. But the truth is that God is not just unknowable in the sense that He's beyond what we know. God is unknowable in the sense that He's what we don't know that we don't know. Things that we can't even know that we have no knowledge of. In fact, it's so deep that in Kabbalah we usually even call it that it's not just that this part of God is unknowable to us, It's even unknowable to itself. He can't even come to know himself in a certain respect. Or to say it, I hope that everybody here is on our newsletter. The newsletter is on inner.org, inner.org. You can sign up for it. I haven't sent it yet for this Friday. There was a beautiful class from Rav Ginsburg on Wednesday, and he talked very deeply about the unknowable head as being above what Kant described as the sublime. I don't want to get into this whole topic. It's a huge topic. You can read it there. But the point was that God is both finite and infinite, and he's neither finite nor infinite. And that is something that we call He, the concealed, that we cannot even have knowledge that we don't know yet. What does this have to do with a Levite? That in the aftermath of everything that happened with Korach, Moses is saying to them, the prophecy is saying to them, you should have aspirations to reach that level. You can't reach that level. To serve God means to try to reach the He, that which cannot be known, not because it's beyond my knowledge, but because I don't even know what needs to be known in order not to know it. It's far beyond anything in my mind. But the Levite has to have that aspiration. And the Levite in that sense is the one who through his aspiration pushes up the entire hierarchy of mankind and leads us. And that's why he's called a Levite, because it's like he accompanies everything. He moves everything, as we said, that the whole point of the Levite, as opposed to the priest is a up-down motion, but the Levite is a motion from below to above. He's pushing everything up, and he's pushing it through aspiration. Now, you could say that maybe this is just about the Levite, but if the Torah writes it, it's also true about everybody's Levite in themselves. We all have a Levite inside. And so the Levite within us should be constantly aspiring to reach a mystical state that we can't even know that we don't know yet. That aspiration for that which is beyond is actually what drives the human spirit. And it's a healing motion, it's a healing dynamic in the person. So that if a person comes and says, I'm entirely only rational, I have no mystical aspirations, so that's exactly what it means, that they're falling backwards without even knowing it. Because in this world, if you're not aspiring to move up, if you're not moving up, then you're actually falling backwards. And this, in a sense, is the consolation that God and Moses are giving the Levites, who after this whole affair is finished and done, they tell them that, look, the aspiration that Korach had was proper, it was right. It was just not done in the right way, and now we're beginning to establish how it should be done in the correct and constructive way. So I wish everyone Shabbat Shalom, a good Shabbos, and hope that we can meet again next week.